Welcome to Living Outside the Matrix, the show where we help you take control of your lives by making sure that you don't get duped by any misinformation, propaganda, or lies. Hi there, I'm your host, Nigel Howitt. And on the show today, we're going to zoom all the way out and we're going to look at the broad fundamentals of what you need to know and put into practice to make sure you don't die prematurely, to make sure that you have a long health span, to make sure that you don't achieve all of your life's values, get the wife, the good job, the beautiful house, children, and then suddenly drop dead with a heart attack, or get dementia, or suddenly develop an autoimmune disease like lupus or MS or chronic fatigue. All of these things are really avoidable. Okay, so the purpose of this episode of the podcast is to let you know those broad overall principles. So I'm going to present to you today 12 optimal health strategies to make sure you can achieve your own optimal health. So first up, there's a couple of points to make. One is that health is an effect. Health can only be enjoyed if we put into place the appropriate causal mechanisms whose effect is human health. Okay, you can't just sit on a couch all the time eating candy floss and pizza and expect to enjoy the outcome that is health. Okay, it just doesn't happen. Cause and effect reality. So what we do have to do is put into place these strategies so that we can virtually guarantee that the effects that we get are a healthy body. And a healthy body, we must remind ourselves, is one of the number one prerequisites to having a successful life, okay? Health is not the goal. Health is not the end in itself, okay? Health is simply the means by which we experience a wonderful life, a wonderful, happy, thriving life. There are lots of other things we need to know as well, but you must have a bodily vehicle that functions well and ideally to its optimum potential. And that's what this is all about. Health is not a goal in and of itself. So it's an effect. Health is also a choice. And specifically, in any given moment, our state of health is the sum total of all the lifestyle choices we've made and consequent actions, and they all stack up. All these little choices we made all have their effects, and in any given moment it's just that the sum of all the effects of our past choices and actions. So in as much as we have power over our ability to make our own lifestyle choices, to that extent we've got control over our health, and we can choose. That's what I want. That's what I'm going to work towards. Okay. If we're in hospital or if we're in prison or something where our lifestyle choices are narrowed temporarily or permanently, then obviously that's a different context. But for most of us, free to make our own choices about how we live our lives, health is a choice. We need to know that so that we can be empowered to make those choices, confident that we can experience the effect. Last thing I want to say about this before I dive straight into these 12 optimal health strategies is this, that although health is our natural condition, although some people say it's our birthright, it's just what our bodies want to do, it does require effort to maintain, to achieve it and to maintain it. In order to keep doing the right things by our body, to provide the nutrients that it needs, to avoid the toxicities that would compromise it, all of these things, it requires an ongoing commitment, and it takes effort. You have to bother to do it. But the rewards, I want to say, are enormous, and they extend well beyond just health. Obviously, you get the reward of being healthy, but you get huge gains in self-esteem and a sense of self-worth when we put into practice those things, when we know that we're doing right by our bodies, by ourselves, when we know that we're living right. So there's a huge feel-good factor. And although in the pursuit of happiness, there are a few other things that we need to consider as well. If the pursuance of our own optimal health is, quite high up there, one of our values, and if we've designed a lifestyle in order to achieve that, there's a huge feel-good factor. And in my view and in my experience, you're well on the way to living a happy life if we bring these strategies to bear, design them into our lives. Health is a sum of lifestyle choices, so it behoves us to design a lifestyle that can accommodate all of these things. So that's important to bear in mind. So one last thing to say is that in order to avail ourselves to all the correct information so that we can be healthy, so that we know what to do, we have to get over the hurdle of always believing the authority view, or always going for the appeal to authority or the appeal to majority. We have to step outside of the matrix. We have to be able to think for ourselves and question things and see that an awful lot of mainstream health advice is simply wrong. Okay, in the age of the internet, all of the resources are out there, and unfortunately, it takes some time and effort to educate ourselves about how to be healthy. But it's, I think, one of the fundamental criteria for claiming to be an adult is to know what's good for us, and that naturally involves how to be healthy. Okay, so without further ado, there are 12 essential lifestyle strategies, optimal health strategies, if you like. They do overlap, they interrelate, and they, to a certain extent, depend upon each other. But let's dive in. Number one at the top of the list is to think and act rationally, to deliberately decide, I am going to be healthy, and I am going to do that which it takes to bring that effect into my life. It's really important to act and think rationally, because if we don't do that, we're not going to really achieve anything in life, let alone health. So that's really, really important. And thinking and acting rationally is all about stacking our values up in some kind of sensible hierarchical order. In fact, to the extent that we're rational, that happens automatically. And obviously, optimal health is right up there near the top. It's not absolutely at the top, but it's near the top. So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is to maintain a healthy gut. If you can maintain a healthy gut, if you can look after and prioritize the health of your gut, you necessarily tick so many boxes for optimal health. It really is right at the foundation of our well-being. Okay, to help you in this respect, on the website lawfulrebel.com, I have a gut health checklist. Feel free to check that out. It's got more information that I'm going to be able to share with you here. But essentially, to look after our gut, we have to make sure that we preserve the functional integrity of the epithelial layer that is our gut. Our gut, the tube that runs from your nose and mouth, sinuses, all the way through to your anus, is effectively the outside world through which you put your food and drink, and it can get absorbed into your body, and toxins can get secreted out into that tube, and then it passes outside. It's absolutely crucial that this tiny, thin epithelial layer that lines the gut maintains its integrity. That means doesn't have any holes in it, doesn't have any tears or breakages, because it's an intelligent membrane. It's amazing how it works. I don't even know exactly how it does all this, but it's brilliant. It's held together by these tight junctions that open up to let certain nutrients pass in so we can absorb nutrients into our body, and similarly it can open up to allow things out. It does this, I don't know how, but it's an intelligent membrane, and it's important because it must be able to it must be able to control this process. It must always know where the outside is and where the body starts and ends, if you will. So the immune system that sits right behind the lining of the gut is also so tied in with the health of this epithelial layer. So as soon as this epithelial layer starts to break down and get holes in it, which is commonplace these days, then of course you can get undigested food particles coming through straight into the immune system, into the blood. You can get all sorts of pathogens, viruses, bacteria, fungi, all sorts of things. If the membrane is peppered with holes, it's a sieve for things to get in that shouldn't be there. Presto, autoimmune disease, all sorts of things can happen because now the immune system is got all sorts of things coming at it to deal with. Every single time a bit of undigested food comes through a tear in the gut lining, the immune system has to mount a response to deal with that foreigner that shouldn't be there. Now, unfortunately, leaky gut is very commonplace due to the huge popular usage of glyphosate in modern food growing. In almost all our food that's grown, it has an awful lot of glyphosate sprayed on it. And this is really unfortunate. Glyphosate is an antibiotic. Not only does it kill the microbiome, not only does it kill the bacteria and microbes in our gut, but it also destroys the integrity of these tight junctions that constitute the lining of the gut. So for most of us, because glyphosate is literally in the environment, it's a water-soluble toxin, and it's almost everywhere. It's in many places. It's in the rain. It's in the water supply. My local farmer up the road, he sprays his wheat many times in a season, and literally the glyphosate blows in the wind across the fields into my organic farm. It's dreadful. It's criminal. But this is happening in loads and loads of places, and almost all of us have a compromised gut lining as a result. So guarding against leaky gut is a huge top priority, and one of the few things I've found that can do it successfully is this product. One of the few supplements that I think everybody needs. Restore. It's created by Dr. Zach Bush. Again, there's more information about that elsewhere on the website. But any other strategies, and consult the gut health checklist. Any strategies you can bring it to bear to ensure that you don't have a leaky gut are going to serve you. Also, we need to broaden the diversity of our human microbiome, particularly the gut microbiome. And this involves all sorts of lifestyle choices. We have to avoid the routine use of antibiotics. We have to be very careful about using antibiotics. We have to enjoy the outdoors. We have to make sure that we don't insist that our home is too squeaky clean. There are a number of things that we can do to avail ourselves to a more diverse gut microbiome. Obviously, our diet is a huge one on this. If you eat too much sugar, that fuel will favour a very narrow selection of species that will proliferate in a high sugar diet. So you get what's called gut dysbiosis. You get a huge bloom in certain bacterial and microbial species at the expense of others. So it's important to limit your sugar. It's important to eat sufficient fibre, because the fibre is food for a whole host of bacteria and other microbes. So there's a whole lot of things that we can do, but gut health is right down there at the foundation of our well-being. And I urge you to consult the checklist as I've mentioned. Optimal health strategy number 3 is conscious nourishment. Now, one of the things that we all have power over is what we choose to put into our mouths. There aren't many of us who can legitimately claim that we can't help it. I couldn't help that I ate those chips and donuts and stuff. So, and it's good news that our dietary choices, what we choose to put in our mouth, is one of the biggest, most powerful tool in the box, if you like, for affecting our genetic expression and our health outcomes. This really can't be overstated. Everyone can control their diet, and to the extent that you can control your diet, that is a huge, huge part of ensuring your health. Yes, there are other things too, but that is the most powerful tool in the box. We have to learn what our bodies require. We have to learn what poisons them and how to avoid those sorts of things. So there's a lot in the whole food subject, and I'll be going into in coming weeks specifics of what we can choose to eat to best support our health. There's already, of course, a lot of information on lawfulrebel.com at the moment. So if we take control and consciously nourish ourselves, we can totally do away with the worry about catching diseases. Really, you can virtually guarantee that your immune system can be supercharged. I'm not kidding. Okay, you can virtually guarantee a much longer health span by taking care of our dietary choices. And one of the key fundamentals of this is not eating solely for taste. Okay, it's really important to, if you like, mature and grow up out of the tendency to just eat stuff that you like. You know, we're not children in sweet shops anymore. We have to eat for our well-being and taste. You don't have to throw taste out. And in fact, as we learn to embrace things like fermented foods, a key ingredient for a diet that supports gut health, there's a whole load of new flavors that open up there. And honestly, if we have a deliberate intent to eat for our well-being, and we've rationally set that as a priority goal, then believe it or not, your taste buds will, to some extent, help you out. They'll swing towards an enjoyment of these new flavors. It can be done. I know that's been my experience and the experience of many people that I've spoken to. So moving on, optimal health strategy number 4 is to burn fat for fuel. Okay, there's more information about this on the website as well, but briefly, the body has the ability to burn two fuels, essentially fat and sugar, or the breakdown products of fats, ketone bodies specifically, and glycogen. So when we shift the body away from the typical Western diet, which is high in sugar, high in refined carbs, low-fat diet, dreadful. When we shift away from that, and that diet has consequences in spiking our blood sugar level 3 times a day, sometimes more when people snack. Each time you eat a high sugar diet, your blood sugar level quickly spikes. Your insulin level has to spike as well to drive down that blood sugar level, and then it often drives it down so much because it has to, that it pushes it below the optimal level, and we get a sugar crash, and we must eat sugar, we must grab a chocolate bar, and so this roller coaster ride on a metabolic level continues. It's possible to do away with that, and if we reduce our carb consumption quite radically, we can, and up our healthy fats, we can kick the body into a totally different metabolic mode where it burns fat for fuel. And this opens up so many benefits to the immune system. It's a cleaner burning fuel. There's less reactive oxygen species created at the cellular level. It's much better for mitochondrial health. And again, they're listed on the website, but the benefits are almost too many to go into here. Clearer thinking, better dental health, increased longevity. You naturally stabilize at your body's ideal weight. You don't even have to think about losing weight. You don't have to think about it. So burning fat for fuel is a really important strategy. It requires a little bit of study. It requires a little bit of getting to know. It requires a little bit of practice, changing your eating habits. Your body has to adapt into fat burning mode, or nutritional ketosis as it's referred. So it's not something that you can just snap into overnight, but it's a key optimal health lifestyle strategy. And if you can design that into your life, you're well on the way, along with your conscious nutrition and looking after your gut. You're many, many steps down the road to enjoying optimal health. Optimal health strategy number 5 is to periodically fast. So it's amazing that simply not eating is one of the most powerful ways to boost your immune system. When I was speaking to Professor Thomas Seyfried about cancer several episodes ago, he said to me that one of the best things you can do if you were to get a cancer diagnosis, and if you follow any of this stuff, there's no way that you would get that. But if you did have cancer, or if you knew somebody that got cancer, one of the best things you could do would be to fast for a week immediately. Eat nothing, go on a water fast for 7 days. Fasting, as we know, because it's part of all the major religions, is a huge part of our evolutionary past. There has long been knowledge of the benefits of fasting, and it is an extremely powerful intervention for supporting the immune system and for dealing with disease, for detoxification. Again, I've got a post on that. We're going to have to be relatively brief here because I've got 12 of these to go through, but check out fasting. It's wonderful. Optimal health strategy number 6 is to get grounded. Now, this is not conventionally part of the sort of palette of what's required for health, but it's recently been discovered that if we simply kick off our shoes and socks and maintain electrical contact with the earth, one of the best ways to do this is walking in the sea, on the beach, but putting your dangling your feet in a river or in a pond, or simply standing on damp grass. It's a very powerful way to support the immune system. Again, the immune system relies on the passage of electrons, of oxidation and reduction, and when your body or your immune system within the body can make use of this abundant supply from the earth of spare free electrons instantly available up through the feet, this is a very huge bonus, a significant bonus to the immune system. And also, conversely, if we spend our entire lives wearing rubber-soled shoes and never touch the earth, we actually build up a positive charge. And it's been said by quite a few people, Dr. Zach Bush particularly, that most chronic disease and ill health is associated with a positive charge, and a negative charge is conversely associated with optimal health. So get grounded. It's cheap, it's simple, it's easy. One of the best ways to do it is by sleeping on a grounding sheet. This is something that you can simply put over your mattress, plug into your main socket, make sure your house is properly grounded and it doesn't obviously tap into any electricity. In fact, it's best in your sleeping area if you have the electricity shut off at night. But the earth contact should still be good, and this will mean that when your house is properly earthed, free electrons can pass up through the wiring system through to your bed sheet, and while you sleep and while your body is naturally regenerating, you can enjoy the benefits of being grounded. Well worth looking into this, ladies and gentlemen. It's a really powerful strategy to achieve and maintain your optimal health. Moving straight into optimal health strategy number 7, which is to get sufficient good quality sleep. We all know that sleep is really important. It's a lifestyle choice. Early to bed, early to rise makes us healthy, wealthy and wise. Some of us have heard that one. It's best not to shift work. It really is. I know it might be necessary to do at some part of our lives on our stepping stones to achieving what we want, but in the long term, things like shift work are just bad news. You must respect your body's circadian rhythm, and even going to bed early and getting up early and tuning in and having a regular sleep pattern is so beneficial. There are a number of things you can do to support good sleep. For example, as you get older, not drinking too much before bedtime so you don't pointlessly get disturbed by waking up to urinate at night. Shutting off electrical equipment around the bed is another important one. Keeping the room not too warm. Keeping the room completely dark. There are also tips such as not to use electronic devices such as mobile phones and laptops and tablets and so forth because of the blue light that they emit several hours before bedtime. Or if you do, you can always put on a pair of blue blocking glasses, which goes a long way to remediate against the blue light. Blue light will interfere with your circadian rhythms. So again, there's a whole there's a whole topic to dive into there, but it's really important to get sufficient, good quality sleep, and we have to design that into our lifestyle. It's really important. You can't bolt that on. Optimal health strategy number 8 is to avoid internal and external toxicity. So it sounds pretty obvious that avoiding toxicity is or must be a key health strategy. What sometimes we fail to appreciate is that the blood is the internal environment for all of our body cells, and the environment of our blood is controlled basically by what we eat and also, what we have in our immediate environment, toxicity wise. So we must be very careful with what we put in our mouths. We must, for example, eat and consume the least possible toxic food. So, for example, strategies of buying and eating exclusively organic are a sensible place to start. There are also other things such as refraining from using fragrances and perfumes, which are just toxic concoctions that we're through the clever marketing that people buy and think that they're going to attract a member of the opposite sex. It's really a load of nonsense. There are all sorts of things like furniture, carpets, our clothes, the washing powders that we use. All of these things can have residues that we breathe in, which immediately can be a toxic threat. Amalgam fillings in your mouth. A huge toxic load. Even, for example, having a root canal in your jaw. If anyone has a root canal there, basically a dead tooth, it's inevitably got bacteria living in the dead root, and bacterial colonies give off toxins and give off byproducts. So all of this increases the toxicity of your internal environment. So there's a whole area of self-education there about how to keep your internal environment toxicity free, diet being a big part of that. So also we have to bear in mind that extends out. So the external environment and the home, as I've mentioned, even being careful about things like air fresheners and air quality, all of these things. Things like weed killers, glyphosate being sprayed in the garden. You must join the dots and connect these things and see how, if we practice that, it's going to harm your internal and external environment. Must be toxicity free. So that's optimal health strategy number 8. Strategy number 9 is to limit your exposure to electromagnetic fields. Now, I talked about this last week on the show, and it will be discussed again. It's a big topic. It's not all about the thermal effects, but it's highly recommended to educate yourself about the dangers of mobile phone use, of Wi-Fi, of Bluetooth, of smart meters, of baby monitors, of microwave ovens. If anyone's still got one of those, get rid of it. But even static wiring around your bedroom, as I alluded to earlier, or around parts of the house where you might frequent. For example, don't sleep the other side of a refrigerator. You've got a refrigerator backed against a wall, don't sleep near that because of the fields of the fridge motor. So there's a whole lot about pulsed microwave technology, which is used in the phones and the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi, as well as just static fields living under power lines. Don't live under power lines. Move away. It's a lifestyle choice. You just have to grasp the nettle and do what is required. Things like mobile phones and Wi-Fi, it's a difficult one. Nobody wants to give up their smartphone, but we have to, at the very least, modify the way we use these things. Perhaps ring and speak to people less and use the text facility more. For goodness sake, don't put the thing up against your head. Use it on speakerphone as much as you can, unless you really need your privacy, of course. So there are all sorts of things that you can do to reduce our exposure to EMF. And there are a number of things that we can do also to even mitigate the effects of the EMF that we do necessarily have to encounter. There are two major ones that spring to mind. One is supplementing with large amounts of magnesium. Most of us are magnesium deficient anyway, but if you up your magnesium levels, you go some way to mitigating the effect of the voltage-gated calcium channels, which are opened up in this mechanism that's described on the previous episode. And in short, supplementing with magnesium is a great way to mitigate against the effects, as is also a great exercise routine called the nitric oxide dump, designed by Dr. Zach Bush and keenly advocated by Dr. Joseph McCullough. And this is a very brief exercise workout. It's in the previous episode if you want to check it out, the nitric oxide dump, and it actually releases the nitric oxide, which is a product of the EMF fields that we're in. It gets overproduced in the cells, and this exercise routine actually dumps that nitric oxide into the blood, where it's a bonus. In fact, it actually helps to open up the capillaries and do a number of good things. So that's worth bearing in mind. A link to that in the notes below. So moving on to optimal health strategy number 10, and this is to have a stress reduction strategy. It's pretty self-evident, most of us kind of know that, but we've got to have something where we can unwind, whether it's going for a walk with a dog, whether it's going fishing, whether it's just quietly reading a book or sitting quietly and meditating, or whatever it is you choose to do. It's really important to do something which is downtime. It's kind of set aside from all that busy stuff that we all run around doing every day. Just some time where you can maybe introspect, maybe think, maybe not think. It doesn't really matter, but whatever works for you, but some kind of stress reduction technique or strategy is a very, very important one. Stress, remember, is a key factor in heart attacks. There's a huge dietary component, but there's a big stress component as well. And although stress can be a good thing up to a certain point, nobody wants to be overstressed. So have a stress reduction program designed into your lifestyle. Optimal health strategy number 11. Now, this really shouldn't be number 11. Perhaps it should be earlier, but obviously exercise is absolutely crucial to health and well-being. On the website and in this podcast, I haven't yet said much about exercise, but that is due to change. There's a whole load coming up about exercise. Basically, we have to move more and sit less. Sitting is the new smoking. And there are three major components that I've discovered in my personal journey of studying the requirements of exercise. And it's essentially to stretch. I use yoga, to strength train, and to also focus on the cardio. And high intensity interval training is a great way of combining strength training and the benefits of cardio. So in the Matrix, the old sort of advice was always to do, spend hours and hours in the gym, low intensity exercise, to go off running for miles and miles. And this imposes a huge time load on us, and really time is of the essence in a modern life. Nobody wants to spend hours in the gym, although some might find that enjoyable. But high intensity interval training and indeed strength training with fewer repetitions but done far more slowly. There is huge benefits to be gained from even stripping down to one repetition of a particular exercise. Say you were doing a bicep curl, where you spend 10 seconds on the exertion, on the up, if you like, in that particular exercise, and 4 seconds releasing. So we're doing it super slow, so you can cut down the number of reps. Anyway, so high intensity interval training is something that we'll be looking into, but that's a key part of the new strategy towards the exercise requirements for optimal health. So stretching, maintaining strength or strength training, particularly important as we grow older, and paying attention to cardio exercise, getting the heart operating in its peak zone for sufficient amount of time in our working week, in our weekly program, if you like, is absolutely crucial. So again, this needs to be designed into our lifestyle. We need a lifestyle that, instead of going to the gym to bolt it on, maybe we can design it in somewhere, design certain activities, being more active, using a stand-up desk perhaps, maybe working from home. There are many, many things that we can do. And you know, there are some times in our life when, depending on our jobs and you know, and our strategy to get to where we want ultimately, maybe we can't do all these things. But in the long term, it pays to have a plan to design your optimal lifestyle where you can achieve all of these health strategies. So the last one on my list, again, and that doesn't mean that it's least important, is to hydrate. Optimal health strategy number 12 is to be sufficiently hydrated. And this is really important to, well, there's two things that are very, very important that spring to mind about this. And one is you must be drinking good quality water. You simply can't be drinking, in England where I am, in Hertfordshire, north of London, you just can't drink the tap water. The tap water is not safe to drink. It's got that good old glyphosate in it, it's got antibiotic residues, it's got contraceptive pill residues in it, it's got all sorts of nasty stuff in it. Tap water, not to mention the chlorine. In some areas it's fluoridated, for goodness sake. You don't want to be drinking fluoride in your water. Tap water is to be avoided. Bottled water in a plastic bottle, not such a good idea. A whole house filtration system I would recommend, unless of course you can dig yourself a well or a borehole. And this comes into designing that lifestyle strategy. Where are you living? What are you doing? Oops, excuse my dog making a noise there. So pure water is absolutely essential. It's a massively important resource, and if you can secure a good supply of water, that is a major tick in the box for your optimal health, because water, you can be drinking poison inadvertently if you're drinking the wrong water. It's worth noting that things like structured water that Dr. McCullough has mentioned is great. For example, if you were to eat a whole organic cucumber, for example, that's a huge amount of water. Obviously, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably way up in the 90s of water. So if you were to literally bite and chew and eat a whole cucumber, I'm not advocating you do that necessarily, but the water content of that is structured water. It's electrolyted water. It's great quality water. Okay, so this leads me on to the other point about drinking sufficient water, is that it's not always enough just to guzzle back pint after pint of water and then, you know, be urinating a lot all day. It can be just passing straight through. The water's got to get into the cells. You've got to hydrate the cells. And again, this is quite a big topic beyond the remit of this particular show, but we will be looking into this in future in greater depth. But we need electrolytes in our water. We need to take other strategies. The product Restore is also good for this as well, in helping to hydrate the cells properly, to get that water into the cells. Very important for detoxification. So that wraps it up for our 12 optimal health strategies. The idea is that we design these into our lifestyle ultimately. And if we do that, if we put in these causes, we can confidently expect the effect that is health. It does take effort. It does take some hard work. But to be adults, we must know what's good for us. And We don't want to have achieved everything we want in our lives. We don't want to have just paid off our mortgage, just bought that fabulous car, all these things we might just have achieved and then drop down with some sort of chronic disease. And it's so preventable, ladies and gentlemen. It really is preventable. It's not rocket science. Yes, there's an effort that you have to put in, but it's achievable. Anyway, I urge you to visit the website, lawfulrebel.com. Plenty more details on all of these strategies, some up and coming, but there's also a lot of information on there. I do hope you got some value for this. Please hit the like button and please feel free to comment. Always very keen to read comments. Leave questions in the comments below. Thank you very much for listening. I do hope you'll join me again for another episode of Living Outside the Matrix.
Change you want to see.